Hi, everybody, and welcome. I am Haylee Mitchell-Haugen. I'm the editor of Sheila-Na-Gig Online and Sheila-Na-Gig Editions. Tonight, I'm happy to welcome poet Marjorie Maddox for our featured reading, and she's going to be joined by poets from our spring issue of Sheila-Na-Gig Online. We have a great lineup for you tonight. Okay, so Marjorie Maddox is a professor of English and creative writing at Lock Haven University. She's published 13 collections of poetry, including Transplant, Transport, Transubstantiation, Begin with a Question, and the Acrostic Collection with Karen Elias, Heart Speaks is Spoken For. The story collection, What She Was Saying, also 4 children's YA books, and Commonwealth Contemporary Poets on Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, that's right. Her forthcoming collection in the Museum of My Daughter's Mind is an acrostic collection based on 17 paintings by Anna Lee Heffer, and including work by other artists that you can let us know about as you're talking to us. And that is forthcoming from Shanti Arts in 2023. So welcome, Marjorie. So happy to have you here. Why don't you let us know about your books and give us your great reading.
Thank you so much, Haylee. Thank you for tonight, and thank you for everything that you do for poetry. I'm excited to hear everybody else read tonight. So thank you all for coming and to hear this launch also for Sheila-Na-Gig. As Haylee said, I'm going to kind of give you some teasers for these 2 books that came out. The first one is Heart Speaks is Spoken For, the acrostic collection with Karen Elias. And Karen took this heart-shaped cracked stone that she found in Maine, on a beach in Maine, and she took photograph after photograph, and that's kind of what we base things on. But sometimes the photograph came first and sometimes the poem came first. So I'm going to share my screen so you can get a glimpse of, oops, it says the host disabled participant screen sharing. So I don't, maybe you can just make me a co-host. So you can see these images that Karen created because they're pretty amazing. The way that we originally got together, we'd known each other for a while. We were colleagues at Lock Haven University way back when. And then Karen ended up teaching also at another university. But we met at an art gallery, or we started collaborating after we were paired at an art gallery. I was given one of her images to write a poem about, and she was given one of my poems to create a composite photo on. Okay, you think we're all set for the, here we go. Okay, great. Because I'd really love you to see these images a little bit larger. Okay, can everybody see that now? Mm-hmm. So this is the poem that Karen was given, and this is the image that she created out of it. And I'll give you a little bit of background about the poem. Some of you may have heard this before, so I hope you'll indulge me a bit. My father had his first heart attack when he was 38. He lived until the age of 65. He had 10 cardiac arrests. In fact, I gave him CPR when I was in high school. But he received his heart during the blizzard of '93. And those of you in the Midwest, Pennsylvania, East Coast, you'll remember this blizzard. I had been out to Ohio to visit my parents from Pennsylvania, heard about the blizzard coming, rushed back. A man died in a car accident. My father got his heart, but I couldn't get back because all the roads were completely closed down. So you'll see in this image of Karen's the map of Ohio in the background, and then this image kind of the icy road, and then that cracked heart. Treacherous driving. It's as safe as traveling to work, a cardiologist before performing a transplant. The first night of the blizzard, that stranger inched into Ohio. Halfway through, he skidded into our snow-speckled lives. His heart is buried in my father, who is buried. This is the hole in the stranger, in my father, in my own cracked chest, hail cupped in its cavity, the aorta beginning to freeze. All winter, the weather preaches white lies, fields blank of roads, a curve straightened, the even light of sky. Tonight, the breeze is all icicles, banner-like from the clouds. Nothing is movable in this treacherous state. Our wheels spin, their rhythm a breath that pulls us, then stalls. The law of the body, of the state, cannot replace the chain reaction, jackknifed lives, hope piling into hope. The man and his heart, cold on an icy road, warmed us for weeks, while winter, a clear blue thing, wafted light. And so you can see how after, we kind of got going on this, we wanted to keep doing more. So here are some of the other images, which I think are just really intriguing and were very inspiring to me. And this is the one that's on the cover. I learned about this, the idea for this poem from an article where I read about how often people who receive donor hearts, donor organs, often take on the characteristics of the person who gave the organ. So they might take on the diet preferences, the musical preferences, sometimes the personality traits. I'm gonna click this so I can see better. Transplanted. Though they'd never met, the man with the dead man's heart inside him dreamed his donor's face, limbs, lungs, sung in his sleep the dead man's favorite song in the deep baritone voice that wasn't his own, but his, the one not known or seen or heard, except in night's deep cradle of sleep, this stranger's metronome of a heart, humming behind ribs that no longer felt like his, beautiful fence for an organ lifted from someone else's afterlife. Even waking, the new old man and his heart now know nothing of old boundaries, the ones composed by the living. Instead, in bright, silent daylight, he takes his first tentative beat toward love. And this particular photograph seemed very much full of hope to me, with those kind of images of gold at the bottom, kind of pushing up. And so that's what I came up with. Here's a very ghostly kind of image. And I think I'll read this one too, Chopping Block, which inspired kind of a poem about fleeing domestic abuse, fleeing danger. Always the raised axe, shattered sky, steel staring down wood and victim. The danger of waiting for danger cracks us all. Each swoop of aim and blade, decades in the making. This is the way of memory, its ringed age circling the foundation of trunk, snaking the blind heart, each metal glint refracting the angle of fear that grips its evening ritual of chop, 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 while a stranger, someone like you or me, lies shock still, face up, and crows those dark bystanders, caca sharp warnings of light and fairy tales gone bad. Even now, darkening into never after, into forest, into trespass, into now. Open your eyes and breathe. The night creeps close on dead leaves. The hunter swings again his sorrow. Flee. And this one reminded me of the tale of Snow White, where the evil queen sent her into the forest for the hunter to kill her and bring back her heart, but instead he brings back the heart of the boar, and supposedly the tree, the mulberry tree, grows in the shape of a heart. That's not what Karen necessarily had in mind, but I looked at it and that's kind of what came into my mind. And I love this image of hers, Asphalt Heart. And I'll read this one. This one is both about my father's heart transplant, but also about Black Lives Matter. And you can see how this image called Remember Me, there's like blood in the crack of the heart. Heart in a box. And a heart in a box was a way to transport donor hearts. No picnic cooler look-alike, the kind transporting a dead man's heart to my father in '93, after his 30 years of near death, when the blizzard driving, really dead, anonymous donor said yes to a life not his. No, today's latest medical advance keeps the dead's bloody Valentine punning all the way to the sterile, stretched out on the table, almost corpse, knocked out while the crying bystanders pray for mercy, for miracles. And outside in the real bloody world of Baton Rouge, Falcon Heights, Dallas, my town, yours, no heart pums in Alton, Philandro, Lorne, Michael, Brent, Patrick, Michael J., while waiting bystanders pray for advances and miracles. And no heart pumps in the dead silence of the dug up ground where they'll be transplanted, bloody organs in another box, because some said no to a life not theirs, while others, between the beats and the beatings, the rat-a-tat-tat-tats and the pa-pums, tried to say yes. And here's a memorial for George Floyd in black and white. And quarantine. We started the book before the pandemic, but because of some delays, we were able to add in some additional images and poems. And I love how Karen has these two stone hearts in the window, and you get the sense of being both together and apart. Quarantine. Apart inside, together they stare not at each other, but at the worn world beyond arm's reach. There, the child alone, hopscotching away her worries. And there, the single blue jay dotting the drab day with color. What is no more and what is still keeps moving through the familiar view. Remember, one laughs or sighs, turning again toward the other, together inside. And here's another one about the quarantine. And I'll end reading this poem and then I'll show you a few more images. Karen is an environmental activist, and so a lot of her images sparked things on this topic as well. And you'll see how morning is spelled here. Morning song for the earth. Here the stone heart waits for the tug of tide, the undertow of pole, the grainy tabula rasa of mind, lapped clean of conscience, or not. Even now, seaweeds entwine, brittle entanglements rot in the sun. The dying snare the dead, such rocky shores. Each dawn, the gulls caw their crescendo of shriek, capsized days breaking into dirge. The cracked and soulful, as lonely as a sad ballad of loss, swooping low, then rising in morning's daily obeyed of hope. Such deceptive beauty, elegy for the earth. And then here are just some more images. And I'll go ahead and stop sharing here. But I wanted you to see those because those images are just so powerful, I think. And just, sometimes I would have a stack of essays grading and an image would come through email and I procrastinated the essays and did some brainstorming on the poems because I just couldn't resist. Okay, so I want to go ahead and read you then some poems from this book, Begin with a Question, which you can see is a very different type of book just from the cover. Really deals a lot with some of the toughest questions, I think. Why is there suffering in the world? Why is there evil in the world? Especially these last couple of weeks, we've been thinking about these kind of things, maybe even more than usual. But I'll also, let me go ahead and start with some of these. One of the things that I love about poetry is its ability to help us to empathize with others and what they're going through. So I had been thinking about a friend who had lost a child. And then I also saw the statue, the Michelangelo statue of Pietà of Mary holding the crucified Christ. This is the way my mind works. And then I jumped back to Eve holding her murdered son. not only murdered, but murdered by his sibling. So this is called PrePieta. Long before Golgotha, it's just this one mother collapsed, just Eve, weeping in Cain's rocky field, haggard, alone, except for the body she cradles limp in her grieving arms. It's worse than Eden, repeated. She chose the tree, passed the seed of her will to the babe who cooed and grew into the man aiming this rock at his brother, this bloody rock she cannot touch. No sacrificial lamb, but flesh of her flesh, her youngest, her meadow boy, here across her lap. And now his sheep have found them bunching up without their able in this cursed field, crowding in. She fears them. She loves them. Their thick wool brushing against her shoulder, her weeping, their bleeding. And this next one is kind of a companion poem. I guess it would take place actually a little bit earlier, but thinking of Eve remembering towards the future because this happened afterwards, but thinking of Lot's wife, as you'll remember, who turned around and turned into salt as the story goes. Upon leaving Eden, Adam's wife thinks she hears Lot's wife. Behind, green, gone brown, gone gray, her animals scurrying into woe saith the Lord, and the solid garden gate slamming shut so loudly she swears the horizon splits into absence, as deep as this regret twisted up inside her forever. Maybe it's sand that demands toil from the land, but just then a sharp wind wrapped in Yahweh's sorrow smells so much like salt that Eve shivers, grips her husband's hand, stares straight ahead into the blazing desire she will not choose again, will not. Behind her, that other woman weeps tears as brittle as betrayal, as thin and beautiful as shed skin. And shifting gears a little bit, when the pandemic hit, I began teaching on Zoom. My husband, who's also a professor, was home teaching on Zoom. And our son, who at the time was a senior in college, came home and was taking classes on Zoom. So we were all together inside and we kind of got into a rhythm of day-to-day activities. Inside, one house in this rhythm of ritual, 6 a.m., 8 a.m., 4 p.m., our laptops open in the kitchen, the living room, a bedroom, hellos at the refrigerator while ascending, descending the stairs, the constant tap of keys, the background of faraway horses we're all riding, professor parents, one day professor son, across this long expanse of knowledge where we're kicking up dust. Someone goes out for a walk, someone returns. On our way to a strange horizon, we hope is sunrise. Good morning, good afternoon, good night. And we gather for whatever's unfrozen or freshly baked, and we watch what makes us laugh or tear up or say, proud of you, love you, thank you. And one stays up all night writing essays, and two wake up early grading essays, and everywhere there is typing and Zoom. And on the morning and the evening of the 42nd day, there is much darkness, but also light. And it was good. It was still good. That's back when we thought 42 days was a long time, right? So, and here's another one that, from 2021 about the storming of the Capitol, which happened on the Feast of the Epiphany. So, kind of like an anti-Epiphany situation, right? One full of light, one full of darkness. And I was thinking as I was walking around my neighborhood around that time and earlier, seeing all these flags and banners and kind of being surprised at which houses had which banners up. People I was friendly with, maybe didn't know super well, but I was still kind of shocked at who had some of the banners up they had up. So this is a sonnet and it's called Epiphany. And so they rush the steps and bash the doors. With windows smashed, the winter light breaks in. Forgotten is the frankincense, the myrrh, the gold the wise men brought. Instead, our kin or neighbors storm the halls. We recognize their faces tense with hate. In different form, they look a bit like us. Yet we surmise this mob that waves its flags, together swarms towards House or Senate, cannot live so near. We say hello on walks, they guard our homes. This is the hard epiphany we fear. The ones we loathe and love might be the same. And that bright star, we find the manger bare, except for all our anger swaddled there. This next one is set at a college jazz concert that I went to at my husband's college. And I sat next to a nun from Nigeria. And just looking at her sideways, you would not realize how immensely she was enjoying the concert until you looked very closely. The nun from Nigeria sits next to me at the college jazz concert. Face blank as absolution. From this back row, she stares straight ahead to the small raised stage of touring musicians, lost in the rebel notes they sold their souls for. Surely the slight shadow of sax expands to fill her one solemn eye, the blur of bass drum the other. The charismatic vocalist filled with the spirit keyboard oscillates up and down her stiff spine, while inside the long sleeves of her habit, her fingers half hidden in the fabric's heavy folds, tap, 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 tap. And here's another kind of music poem that weaves together the metaphysical poet John Donne and Leonard Cohen. Cracked. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Ring the bells that still can ring. Glockenspiel, Caroline, sleigh, service, bicycle, dinner, railroad, for whom the bell tolls. Even the nostalgic past door buzzers of Avon, the sweet small kissing chimes of weddings, the once sacred bells of St. Mary's swing wide and high, your clang and bong up and over. The death knell that keeps snaking through silver and steel, brass and plastic, the daily and divine. It tolls for thee. Ring as ritual until the darkening skies split into echo, into action, until your earthly arms ache with sound that knows no island, thundering boom of the bells. And this last one, a short little poem that I wrote before the pandemic, but it's become very symbolic to me of the last couple of years. And I think maybe you'll see why. So this is called Thunderstorm with Mountains. It's based on when I was driving through the mountains of Virginia. What is foreground and background shifts by the minute, repositions us in, out of the landscape we drive toward, away from. Between temperate and turbulent, downpour and fog, the world is still storm. What we can't see finally settles beside us, mist swelling up the mountain as mystery and folly, as no choice but to creep breaks on down and look, the sky. Praise be. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marjorie, and congratulations for having two very different but both wonderful collections out at the same time. It must be very exciting, and I'm sure you're very busy not knowing which one's coming and which one's going, but thank you for sharing both of those with us tonight. Really appreciate it. It's great. All righty, so we will be switching to our open mic readers, and this batch of readers is from Sheila-Na-Gig Online, a spring 2022 issue. And we'll be kicking off with George Franklin, and then our other readers will introduce themselves. So George, are you with us? Why don't you take it away?
Okay, thank you, Haylee. This is really an amazing evening. Marjorie, that was fabulous. Thank you. I've been realizing lately that I write a lot of poems about walking. So both of these are actually walking poems. The first one was in the spring issue of Sheila, it's called Written on Papyrus. Sky like the ocean, cyan going to blue. I walk without looking up. The sun must have followed the pavement, past shop windows stocked with machines of all sizes and design. The ancient singer that belonged to my mother, powered by pedals. It stood on an iron frame, my father's Pontiac through the window, his sunglasses on the dashboard. There's a price tag hung from the door handle. Next, a lunch counter with revolving stools, and on each a dead relative. Cousin Mary and her husband who sold stationery. Another who was allergic to clams, collapsed on the neatly mopped floor. A bank opens onto dense forest. Behind the teller's cages, pine trees and feral cats rubbing against the bark, resin sticking to their fur, claws scraping against the wood. I head to the bus station, knowing there's plenty of time. The river is so shallow you could walk across on the sandbars. Neon tubes flicker before sunset. On the movie theater's marquee, too many black letters have been lost. No one will ever know what they said. And the second poem I'm going to read is from a sequence that mi compañera Jimena Gomez and I have been working on for a couple of years of Spanish poems that are translated into English, and then English poems that are translated into Spanish, and they all reply to each other in one way or another. Jimena wrote a poem called On an October Night in the Future, and I responded to it with this poem called Another October Night. They say in Japan, it's a terrible thing to be a hungry ghost, drifting unsatisfied through the lives you've left behind, calling out forever for some part of you that's always missing. The wind from the east brings rain, clouds moving quickly across the night sky, palm fronds stretched straight, then dropped, the power lines by the canal rocking and creaking slightly. Perhaps on one of those nights I'll be there, in the corner of your eye, an animal, unidentifiable in the dark, crossing the street, climbing down from a wall. I wouldn't want to frighten you, so I might stay distant, in the shadow of an alamanda vine, or the headlights of a passing car, just a glimpse and then gone. Or if I'm lucky, I'll find myself in the soft air, touching your face as you walk that narrow asphalt path by the canal, a breeze smelling of salt, of the roots of plants that grow in damp soil. And you'll stop and look up and recognize my voice in the rumble of traffic or in the wind swaying the power lines. Of course, there are no hungry ghosts in Japan or here, and all that's left of me will be ashes kept in a cardboard box or a small urn with the label of a funeral home glued underneath. But that part's not important. If on some October night you remember our walks or something I said that made you laugh, it'll be enough. Thank you.
I guess I'm next. I'm Joe Cottonwood. I'm thrilled to be among such talent here. I don't know, somewhat intimidated to be among you, but I'll start off with the poem that is in the spring issue of the magazine, Sheila. It's called Ode to Replacing a 50-Gallon Water Heater. To introduce myself, I've been in the building trades most of my life, besides writing. And so a lot of my poetry comes from that. Ode to Replacing a 50-Gallon Water Heater. Wrestling the mass of a gorilla, but less furry, less flexible, removing crusty pipe amid fragrance of rat droppings. And it is wet, puddles and streams of wet, because that is why you called me. So I bring the tools, the knowledge I carry, the pride. There is delicacy in plumbing, an art that rises beyond skill, to turn tight, but not too tight, to thread tiny fittings, feathery fingertip, device-like hand strength, to lift large with visible results, a gleaming new tank. I bring warmth to your morning face, your dirty dishes, your strawberry shampoo hair. Think of me. And I was tempted to, I'll do one more poem, and I was tempted to counterbalance that. I mean, you do 100 jobs, 99 of them you do really well, and one you botch. And it's the one you botch that haunts you for the rest of your life, you know? So I was going to write a poem, well, I was going to read a poem about that, but I'm not in the mood to self-flagellate here. I'm going to do another poem of pride here. This is called Acorn Stolen. Acorn stolen. Rough oak planks I sand, oil, polish with the deference a rich man expects. The roulette table, a gift, a surprise for his young wife, sparkly, pretty as a rich man expects. But I spy a flaw in one board, a hollow containing an acorn tucked long ago by industrious woodpecker. The nut has split, sprouting, sexy, hairy, one root, pale, hopeful, one stalk, curled, crammed in that womb, seeking earth, seeking light. This board I set outside. Lunchtime, snowed with sawdust, I step from wood shop to fresh air. The plank still in sunshine, the hollow empty. Who stole? 3 years later, in spectacular blaze, the roulette table burns to cinders along with the mansion and the rich man himself. Sparkly, pretty widow with flamboyant grief relocates to Paris with the money and the men you'd expect. 20 years later, an oak tree shades my woodshop, host to woodpeckers with red heads. Some gifts are wasted, some transplanted. Some of us in craft are rooted. We seek the light. Thank you.
I'm next. Hi, I'm Steve Deutsch. I'm a near neighbor of Marjorie. I'm in State College and she's in Lock Haven, so we've read together in the past. I have 3 books out now with Kelsey over the last 3 years. The latest is Going, Gone, with a terrific picture of my favorite uncle playing stickball. I'm going to read a poem from the spring issue and then one that's just been accepted for the next issue. From the spring issue, it's called Forever. Aloft, a single engine prop pulses against the headwind, vibrates briefly like a drill biting bone, then silence over the forest of Pennsylvania. Progress seems little more than slow stepping above the scented pine and hemlock, the horizon unchanging as glass, and I'm as lonely as I have never been before. Is this how forever feels? To coast the empty sky in the silence of the blue-green afternoon. And the other poem, boy, this is going fast, is called Ridge. The ridge here dominates everyone's view. August rains have left the ground green and boggy. This evening, a cool mist rises to hug the ridge like filings in a force field. Wouldn't you like to hold someone so easily? Nature is unaware of its beauty. Tricks of light and season leave it unperturbed. The ridge and I are old companions. A singular feature, it dominates my view from any vantage. I often wonder about the view from the ridge, but city bred, I am too tied to pavement to try the climb. Yet I imagine myself among the explorers of an earlier age. Leather clad and booted, we work our way inland from a Susquehanna landing. Muskets against lion and bear, we muscle our way to the ridgetop and find a valley so inviting, we envision a settlement right here, where I sit rocking. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Robbie Gamble, and I'm zooming in from a beautiful evening in Brattleboro, Vermont. Thank you, Haylee, for convening. This is an amazing event, and thank you, Marjorie, for your beautiful poems and images, and a lot to work on, and the other poets too. This is a wonderful event. I'm going to read two poems. The first is a poem that's in the current issue of Sheila-Na-Gig, and the second is one I wrote just a few days ago. It's kind of a sad bookend to the first. Nocturne on a Bed of Couscous. Years ago, a tornado swelled one dawn and nicked into a corner of a quiet suburb, uprooting a tree and flinging it through the bedroom of the parents of my friend, killing her mother instantly, while her father lay in bed unscathed next to his spouse. Tonight, we will soon turn in, aware that 22 untethered tons of rocket booster are predicted to slam somewhere into the planet before sunrise. Odds are unlikely that Anna would predecease me for any reason on this night, that I would awake a widower. Even more infinitesimal that a glowing chunk of space debris would punch through our ridge beam to take one or both of us out in a sizzle of headboard and linens. We had such a lovely dinner this evening, duck breast and oyster mushrooms and sweet new asparagus. Yet, what is this rise of bile now in the wake of such delightful forkfuls? In the moment, the beast shudders, tumbles off its perigee. Obad with school shooting. That we found each other late in our midlife passages. That no one could say just how this night unfolded, pure repose. Air curling through the curtains, just cool enough to drink. Praise the air, breath, body, the small movements of sleep. And you in your body, stirring, rising, and in another room somewhere, a boy is buckling into his body armor. Thank you.
I always struggle with going after somebody who reads really powerfully. So I guess I'm up next. Hi, everybody. My name is Lynn Schmidt. Please pretend I'm not a trash panda and that you can't see all of this behind me. My computer's charging right now, so I'm a little stuck where I am. So I have two poems. The first poem I have for you is titled Not Ready to Let Go, and this was published in the issue of Sheila-Na-Gig. not ready to let go. I carry my dead dog for months. He comes to work with me, stays buckled in the passenger seat while I meet with clients. When I work on contact notes, he sits atop my desk the way he used to lay in his bed. I'm careful to face the window so he can look out, or maybe so he can look in. I carry him on the bad days, hands touching the cool wood box, grasping for some trace of warmth. I carry him on the road trips because he hated being left home alone. I carry him, because I'm not ready to let go. If any of you are familiar with my work, you know I am not a happy poet. I write really sad stuff. So the next one is also sad, and it's from my collection called All the Time, which was just recently a semi-finalist for the Button Poetry Contest, which I'm like mad pumped about. So this is a sad one too, and I'm sorry. As long as you came back. If you dug your way out of your casket, ripped apart the wood and silk, knuckles cut down to the bone as you scrambled through the dirt. If you crawled on decaying knees, broken legs, and shattered arms, found a razor to slit the stitching of your mouth, reform your tongue, your eyes, your skin. If you left a trail of dead with you wherever you went, burned grass, wingless insects, roadkill littering the streets, as long as you came back, I would welcome you home. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Brock. I'm from Virginia, and I'm going to read two poems. My first poem was in the spring version of Sheila-Na-Gig. I write a lot about the precarity kind of all along the theme of mothering. My first chapbook is coming out this fall from Kelsey Books. And my first poem is about a mushroom called the death cap, which is responsible for 90% of deaths caused by mushrooms. Amanita phalloides. The mushroom, white, stunning, and suddenly there, near our house, in a town, between the 7-Eleven and the vet clinic, not out in the dark woods, not even down by the creek that sometimes broke its banks, just there, by where we were always walking. A bulbous umbrella, waiting, like a Cheshire cat or a caterpillar with a face. The boys at that age of chub and wonder. I used my phone to catch what I could, their curious heads bending low, just above the wide dome of its rounded top. That landlocked jellyfish afloat, air instead of sailing. My youngest reached out and picked it. I remember wincing at the brokenness. Things were always breaking those days. They didn't walk anywhere, but ran and crashed and hollered so often I couldn't put things back into any sort of order. I wish now I'd let more be. And I must have wished that a little then too, because I asked him to show me, and his brother turned to help him hold it, its head too big, now its stalk was snapped, wobbling the way their heads did not so long ago when I carried them everywhere. And then I heard the neighbor, hands pocketed, head at a tilt, ask, "What you got there?" He was so calm, a naturalist who knew the names of things. "What is it called?" I asked, or might have. But he said to go ahead and put it down, to have the children wash their hands, maybe even change their clothes. He spoke slow to me and gently, and so I didn't jump at first. It dawned slowly, and then I moved, the way mothers do. My second poem was written shortly after Parkland, the mass shooting at the Parkland High School. My oldest son is 16, so he was 6 years old when Sandy Hook happened, and he's now 16 when Uvalde happened just earlier this week. It's called Chocolate Heart, Valentine's Day 2018. Unfurling small fingers, loosened with sleep, I find a fistful of melted chocolate, a heart, heated, sweet. I am careful. I warm the water, fold the cloth, and try to clean the cup of your palm without waking you. I know what it is to love some small thing too much. The way the neighbor boy caught fireflies and moths. The way, when I was your age, I accidentally clasped that butterfly and realized it wouldn't fly again. When your brother was your age, he came home safe, but it changed the way that I hear sirens. I mean, I think of children, fallen, and how blood is darker than you'd imagine, stillness more still. Each day a rendering, if you're lucky, if you're not. There isn't a proper measure for emptiness. I tell myself the lost weren't mine, but I scrub your sweet hand and think of front lines or the heart, the beatingness of being. I kiss the palm that is mine, not mine, and you sleep still sound without the hammered nightmares of one who has survived. And yet here you are, surviving. Thank you.
So I'm Gary. I'm from Grafton, Wisconsin. Gary Beaumier from Grafton, Wisconsin. My latest book is Dented Brown Fedora. Going to read 2 poems. One is called Spirit Animal, that was published recently in Sheila-Na-Gig. And then my other one, Panhandler's Lullaby. So here goes Spirit Animal. For $1, I will sing you my favorite song. Do you mind if my voice careens off the notes a bit, if it quavers? For $5, we can sit in your car in the rain with the motor running, the wipers sweeping, overlooking the city. And you can tell me your stories. If you come back tomorrow and listen to me, I will refund all your money. Then I will tell you, if I were a fisherman, I would fish without a hook, just to feel mesmerized by the waves. And you will say, if you were a hunter, you wouldn't put bullets in your gun only to listen to the way the forest prays. If we were soldiers, we would shout jokes at the enemy just to hear them laugh. Bless me, for I have sinned. Bless you, for you have loved. You will tell me some part of you is a hummingbird seeking a little nectar in a half gale. And I will say I'm a stray dog dodging city traffic and living off of scraps. And then the rain will stop and we will lean against the hood to share a pull of cheap gin from my flask while I blow cigarette smoke up toward the fleeing clouds. And you will say, at least now we know who we are. So I looked for you day after day after that, but you never did return. And then this is my second poem, Panhandler's Lullaby. And this one's for the homeless. Look away as you glide down the off-ramps, pulse the door locks, pray the light to green or turn up your Brahms. Do not glimpse his brief prayer on tattered cardboard, his 3-word biography. He will shelter in a vacant doorway this night, mistaken for a pile of rags, suckling on some cheap booze that will burn a path down his esophagus while a cutting wind scampers litter past him. Yet was he not celebrated at birth by a mother who sang him back to sleep after he took from her given breast. There will be a thumping of music at 3 a.m. that breaks into his unconsciousness, and at some point in the night, the bladder will not hold, and he will shiver and sing out for his mother. Come the next evening, he will find the old busker near the underpass by the tent city, and he will blot the dribbled whiskey from the scraggle of his beard on the back of his sleeve as he wheezes out a cough. And then he will rise unsteadily to toss a few crumpled bills into the music case and listen to the trumpet measure sweet notes off the echo and drift of the concrete. Play taps, he will tell the horn player, and his memory will drift back to the war when he watched the soldier ahead of him step on a landmine, his body shredded into a pink mist, and he will choose to remember that soldier even as he wishes to forget. Thank you. Thanks.
So, hi, I'm Eileen Trout, and we have a Pennsylvania thing going. I live in Cincinnati right now, but I've lived here 5 years, but I came here from State College, where I lived for 16 years when I was a professor at Penn State. So several of us from there. My first poem was published in Sheila-Na-Gig, Unusual Spring. Have you grown shorter? I conjure up crumbling bones beneath enemy skin, attacking your serene exterior that lingers in my sight long after the rearview mirror lets you go. Once, we stood eye to eye, not seeing that way. Now, your shiny head shaves inches from our conflict. My farewell eyes drift down your winter cheeks to that pink hint of fear in the corner of your smile. Through the goodbye wave, your shrunken stance glows like February's unexpected warmth on the dormant earth that surrounds you, transfixed in unusual spring. Brave shoots in you pushing through. And my second poem is also in a spring theme and differently. Garden Variety. I dig deep into this patch, dredge up old stones, cast out wayward sticks, make room for new growth. I plant budding thoughts in my garden of words, fertilize incipient feelings, carefully tend connotations. I dream of coiffed expressions, blooms of articulation, to line precise pathways through meticulous meanings. I awaken. An explosion of blossoms penetrates crevices, meanders indifferent to limits. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Haylee Schwenk. I'm reading from Lakewood, Ohio, and just want to thank Haylee for putting this together, and I really enjoyed all the posts so far. My first poem, both the poems I'm going to read were in Sheila-Na-Gig in March, and the first one is called Unidentified Woman, 2019. In this 1984 Warhol photograph, I might have been the unidentified woman laughing, chin tilted up, half-empty champagne glass in my right hand, left hand on the arm of someone famous. In 2019, I am the unidentified woman in the Chazen Gallery, Madison, Wisconsin, my husband entranced by Beth Kavanaugh's rabbit, our grown children taking selfies in front of her lewd goats. In 1984, I was young and passably pretty and visited New York City, but was always the unidentified woman. And the second one is called Things Won't Clean Themselves Up After All, after the end and the beginning by Wisława Szymborska. The beginning signaled the end, maybe, but in any case, after all this time, we have some cleaning up to do. Someone, broom in hand, on January 6th, swept up the broken glass, picked up discarded water bottles, mopped up the literal shit left behind. Someone has to get mired in centuries of manifest destiny, stolen lives, stolen land, corpses hanging from trees. Our work is not photogenic and will take years. The cameras that documented the lynchings now watch a Black man shot while jogging, a Black man shot while walking away. Someone will have to admit all the beautiful, bold ideas that birthed this country we love were wrapped up with theft, murder, enslavement. Someone will have to plant trees, dig up lead water pipes, unboard windows, repair the mortar in the front steps. The grass can grow over the ruins of anything in time, but someone must make amends. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Laura Foley, and I'm going to read a poem from the most recent Sheila-Na-Gig, and then a poem from my newest collection. And I wanted to thank you, Sheila, and it's really fun to have a sense of a journal, which I really like, coming to life as it is here in my study, all of you here. How Wood Thrush for Ad Shaw, 1931 to 2021. How a single wren still warbles on a topmost branch of a swaying poplar tree. How dandelions still appear like scattered suns across a grassy field. How the unknowing field rests unmown and will remain long enough to host the nesting bobolink. How the steward of this land, for many seasons of late haying, leaf fall, ice, and deep snow, how a dragonfly sips nectar from a flower, pauses on my knee as if to speak, how my focus shifts to his old window in the vale just beyond the reedy pond, how wood thrushes just returned sing their liquid notes in hemlock wood's cool shade, but return to silence when the sun emerges from a cloud, how the day still breaks into spring's first heat. So I'm reading from South Pomfret, Vermont, and I wanted to just share my new collection is called Everything We Need, Poems from El Camino. So this is a photograph from the Camino, the 500-mile walk that my wife and I took across Spain, and she took the photograph. And after we completed that we did it in 18 and then we did it in 19 again. After that, she was diagnosed with cancer. And I'm going to read a poem. This collection, most of them are poems about the Camino. But then after the Camino was done for us, you'll see how we adapted some of what we had learned from our walking. George was talking about poems as a walker, and I can identify very much with that. To Santiago. So Santiago is the name of the cathedral to which the pilgrims, we as modern day pilgrims and ancient pilgrims used to also do the same thing, ending up in northwestern corner of Spain. So this poem is called To Santiago. We began climbing in the year's darkest days, diagnosis in late November, turning trips to the cancer center's mountain into adventure. Tying a scallop shell to her hospital backpack, we metaphored illness as a pilgrimage to Santiago, 8 chemo treatments followed by surgery. We trekked December's steep, bitter peaks, January's icy valleys. How many miles, we'd say, about halfway, sometime in snowy February. We slogged on through a wet March, a windy April that didn't seem like spring. Though our feet didn't develop blisters, her heart raced at an alarming rate. She lost her hair and her taste buds changed. A bit metallic, she'd say, with grit. As we approached surgery in early May, we searched the horizon for the cathedral, knew the steeple would soon come into view. Soon we descend the final hill to Santiago. Soon the maroon-robed priests would swing the Boto Fumero over our heads, fill the vast space with cleansing fragrance of myrrh and frankincense. Soon we'd stroll along the beach at the end of the world, the beach that ends one world and begins another, cancer would become a wintry memory, and our legs would rest, our stash of metaphors ready for the next quest. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks so much, Laura. And thank you to all of our Sheila-Na-Gig open mic readers tonight. It's always so great to bring you together and see this community in action. I'm always just wowed at how well the poems all just work together when you're all reading them together and in the issue as well. And thank you, Marjorie Maddox, for being our featured reader tonight. It's always great to hear you. So very excited.